I'm in the Key Memorial Chapel at Mount Olivet Cemetery with my good friend Chris Haugh.
As you can tell, I love talking. I'm very loquacious, I get it honestly, but I love talking about Frederick history, and I love those aha moments of being able to tell people, and that is why Mater Avenue is Mater Avenue.
But it's so cool because when you learn those details, I will never now look at this as I'll look at it differently. Mm-hmm. I will look at this chapel differently. I will look at the cemetery differently. Like, it's when you learn these little tidbits, these golden nuggets. You really then become so loyal to Frederick and understand and, kind of just have a great connection. And I like it.
And you're right. And it is. And it's an appreciation. And again, the magic of history is, once again, to see how things work. They always, people always, oh, history repeats itself, or if we, if we don't learn from history, then we're imprisoned by it. But I think the big thing is to kind of see, why is Frederick so unique? Why is Frederick so special, so different than so many other places? I mean, it's easy to say that from a marketing perspective. Anywhere you go, you're going to say that your town is the best and your town is different. But there is a reason why Frederick, and one of the interesting things I tell people, one of the most fascinating little tidbits that I bring up in the class is what a gentleman named Carol Hendrickson, long time the Hendricksons, they had a store on Market Street, multi-generations. But Carol Hendrickson, in my interview with him back in 1995, he said that one of the things that Frederick did was it kept the train out. And the B&O Railroad came here. Frederick was like the first major little town it came to from Ellicott City. And it happened, it actually reached Frederick in 1831. And really the people that had been here, a lot of German families and English families too, had kind of taken Frederick from this little village on the western frontier, 1745, and really kind of grew it. Now, we had the National Road here, and that was great. We saw settlers going west and goods coming in from the west, or goods coming in from the west going east. But when the train came through, some of the powers that be here were a little concerned about railroad interest coming into Frederick, their Frederick, and taking over. So what happened was Frederick was kind of kept out. And that's why, if you look at it, we just had a spur line that came in from Monocacy Junction, which would be important come the Civil War for multiple reasons, but we just had a spur line, and trains actually had to back into Frederick. So it really didn't do much for us in terms of industry, where we actually, because of this, you could say, planned selfishness for the leading people that were here at that point to continue being big fish in a small pond, but we watched as Hagerstown, Martinsburg, and Cumberland grew tremendously. Why? Because they embraced the railroad. Hub City with Hagerstown, of course, Cumberland and Martinsburg. But then what happened in the 20th century? Well, you had unions, and then you had mid-20th century, you had interstate trucking, which really supplanted railroads. And Martinsburg, Cumberland, Hagerstown, what has happened to them? Are they Frederick?
No.
Frederick was in this little time capsule because we never grew, and people were embarrassed because we really didn't have this boon, even in the late 1800s, to really change and rip down our old federal-style buildings and put up Victorian, modern buildings. And people were kind of embarrassed about it. And then in the 1950s, 40s, and 50s, people from Georgetown, people from Baltimore, people from all over the country were coming here going, oh my God, you've got this treasure trove, you've got this historic district like no other, maybe like Old Town Alexandria or Old Town Georgetown, and people in Frederick were like, oh, well, we're kind of embarrassed about it. And they said, don't be embarrassed about it. You've got something that a lot of places, other places tore theirs down, but you've got it. And I think, again, to have, and we've got a couple documentaries that are happening right now that will be telling the story of the latter part of the 20th century, but really this revitalization or renaissance of Frederick, people that really cared and created a historic district, saved places like Schifferstadt and Rose Hill Manor, really took stock in our history, the Battle of Monocacy, and to really have that battlefield unit by the NPS to have a Civil War medical museum to really tell the story of Frederick's past. And, you know, and then it's hip and historic, because the hip part, you know, with this arts and entertainment center, the restaurants, the culinary scene, activities like in the street. So really, that is why Frederick is so special. But, you know, I took you from, let's keep the train out of here, to why do we have this vibrant arts community? There's a link there, but I think it's really, you know, for people to really hear the story and understand it. Oh, that's why it happened here. But in other places, it wasn't embraced the same way.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I ask, you know, most people that I interview, you know, what are the top 3 things you love about Frederick? And it is very interesting, because I've now interviewed almost 200 people. The similarities in people who just got here versus and the people that have been here 20, 30 years, it's very similar. It is really, you know, it's about the people, the community, how great downtown is, how the historic charm and all of that. It's really, really quite interesting.
I'll even go one better than you. So last fall, I taught classes on prehistory. I was able to do some documentaries back a couple decades ago on the prehistory, and that's the geology and metageography of why do we have the rivers where they are, why is the mountains, I mean, the mountains here used to be 8 times as tall. But how did that kind of form? Why do we have the rocks that we have? And then what about the native peoples that came through here? And I had an archaeologist named Hetty Ballweber who told me when I was making this documentary in the late 90s, who said the things that attract people to Frederick today were the same things that attracted people thousands of years ago. The original native peoples that came here and settled in the Monocacy Valley. And it was, of course, the salubrious streams and the fresh mountain air, but just the opportunities here with the resources and the natural beauty and opportunity. So to think that it goes back even that far to you know, prehistoric times, that people have been coming here for those reasons.
Maybe we feel that. Maybe we do. Maybe it's reverberated in the.
And what's it going to be like 100 years from now, 500 years from now?
All right, so how can people sign up for your class?
So with the classes that I teach, they can go, I have a History Shark Productions Facebook page. I have a HistorySharkProductions.com website. You can see announcements of upcoming classes, and you can click links that will bring you to registration. So they are pay-for classes, but I think they're very reasonable, and I'm kind of using the structure there that I use for FCC's ILR program.
I think it's great. Well, we are so honored that you love Frederick, because otherwise we wouldn't know anything about it, I don't think.
Well, I'll also invite you to one other thing. I mean, of course, I just gave you a history lesson here, and your head's going to be shaken, I'm sure, for throughout the morning. But in late October each year, under my History Shark Productions, I have kind of a walking tour. It's kind of a class, but it's called the Unsettling Tour of Mount Olivet. And it's a candlelight tour. I've been doing tours here for years, but where I bring people through. It's not a ghost tour per se, like my friend Ron Engelberger does downtown. And Ron does some history tours at night over here at Mount Olivet as well. But I will introduce you reverently to some decedents that are resting in peace, hopefully, here in Mount Olivet, that had unfortunate ends. So it's a little bit, you know, it will leave you unsettled, maybe sad, but what I hope empathetic for the family's loss of their loved one. But I'll be doing that in late October around Halloween, the week before, even on Halloween night and All Souls Day night. Cool. But you can look for that on that History Shark. That's called the Unsettling Tour.
Well, we'll make sure to include it on our Everything Frederick calendar. This is my friend Chris Haugh. Look him up, HistorySharkProductions.com. If you want to know anything about where you live, and I do think it does make your attachment to our town a little deeper, you can find out from him. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Danny.